And now pick a card. The cards are showing me death, among perhaps someone above you.
What?
Above you, an older generation, like parents.
Okay, well, good guess. Wrinkles, gray hair. Yeah, both of my parents are dead. Good guess.
Not guessing, it is what the cards have told me. I am seeing deep into your life in this crystal ball.
Go on.
It's telling me you are a married man. Your travel line is showing faraway places you've been to. You've been to Vietnam, to Italy, to South Africa.
You've been to my Facebook page.
And now it's telling me that this is just a ruse to open a Skeptilab episode on fortune telling.
You got that right. Hello again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Skeptilab. The Bunk Stops Here. I'm your host, Jim Underdown. And today we welcome my old friend, Phil Lamarr. You remember him from Mad TV. He's done voices for Futurama, Samurai Jack, a ton of voices. And a lot of people know you as the guy who accidentally got his head blown off in Pulp Fiction.
Marvin, what do you make of all this?
Man, I don't even have an opinion.
Well, you gotta have an opinion. I mean, do you think that God came down from heaven and stopped? Oh!
I still cringe when I see that scene.
Well, I'll take that as personal, but my mother cringes too.
Yeah, it's pretty horrific. So today we're going to be talking about fortune telling, the art of fortune telling.
Fortune telling?
Yeah.
Wow, that'll be interesting. I mean, how are fortune tellers not wealthy? I mean, they've got fortune in their name. They're not called future tellers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, if you're a fortune teller in 1980, you're buying up Apple stock and who knows what else, you know, making Super Bowl bets and, you know, it's never ending. But this art of fortune telling takes lots of different forms, okay?
Oh. Like those psychics you see in storefronts, or when you drive past someplace with that neon hand sign on the front?
Yeah, exactly. Those count. Also tarot card readers, astrologers, numerologists, palm readers, tea leaves, all that stuff is under the umbrella of fortune telling. Yeah.
Wow. That's a whole big bunch. Is there a common thread?
Yeah, there is actually a common thread. There's a couple of common threads. The first is they're all bull. I have to say that at the beginning. But the other thing, they all use a technique called cold reading.
Cold reading?
Yeah.
That's what we actors do. I wish I could fortune tell whether I was going to get that job I'm auditioning for.
Yeah.
But no, it's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing. There is a little bit of overlap, but it's not the same thing. The cold reading I'm talking about is having a conversation with someone and making it seem like you're getting information from an outside source, usually an otherworldly, like spiritual source. Things you couldn't otherwise know. That's cold reading. Yeah.
That's cold reading. Is there hot reading?
Yeah, there is actually something called hot reading. Hot reading is when you research someone ahead of time. Like you learn facts about them online or whatever.
Oh, like you Google them or check their Facebook page.
Yeah, Facebook is a huge one, Instagram. But even beyond that, I mean, you can do credit checks on people. There are these people finder sites. You know, whatever most people have an internet presence and they reveal quite a bit about themselves.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow, back in the old days before the internet, you would have had to hire a private eye to get that much information about somebody.
Yeah, exactly. What did people do back then? They did. They hired people like Cannon and Banachek, and Jim Rockford would get extra work.
Ooh, look at those references. How old are you?
Oh, I'm getting there. Yeah, it's on its way. Yeah, you don't have to hire Cannon and Banachek anymore. You can just go online.
Are all of these people doing those hot reads?
Surprisingly not. That's what a lot of people think, that it's just easy to, because it's so easy to look people up, that's what they're mostly doing. But those of us in the skeptic world who study this stuff think that that's really not the case. Most of them are doing cold reading because hot read takes time and energy and money. You know, maybe for like the celebrity readings or something, the big stuff they do, or their high-end clients. But really, they don't want to work that hard, and they don't have to work that hard when cold reading works perfectly well on its own.
I think I'd like to learn that skill, do that cold reading, that kind of cold reading.
Yeah, well, I'd be willing to teach you this skill if you promise not to use it for nefarious reasons.
Oh, no. Promise.
I saw some hesitation there.
No, because I'm going to try to get rich.
All right, well, I'll teach you, but let's get into some of the details of what cold reading is all about. And in order to do that, I spoke to my good friend Richard Wiseman in the UK, who's an expert on these sorts of things. Wiseman is an author of many books. He's a former magician, and he's a psychologist, so he's really looked into some of these extraordinary claims and has a lot to say about cold reading. Here's my conversation with Richard. Richard, thanks for being on Skeptilab. Great to see you.
Pleasure, and great to see you as well.
This episode on Skeptilab is about fortune tellers, like tarot card readers, crystal ball, palm readers, all that sort of thing. And I just thought that the real main thread that connects them all is they all use something called cold reading. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, people think of these as being very different sort of techniques. You know, you've got kind of palm reading, as you say, or looking at tea leaves, or a medium standing there and saying, you know, people in the spirit world are giving me messages, or a psychic looking at a crystal ball. They all feel on the surface like they're very different. The truth is, you dig down and psychologically they're identical. And skeptics have been looking at this stuff for a very long time. So some of the first experiments carried out in the kind of late 40s. So there's a long history of skepticism looking at cold reading.
So I guess we should start by just sort of defining it. In our world, we do talk about this a lot. What is cold reading?
Well, the reason it's cold reading versus hot reading is that hot reading, you already know the answer. You've found out a lot about the person and you tell them about themselves, but you found out the information in advance. Cold reading is you don't know anything about the person. They're coming into you cold, and you give them a reading, you tell them about their lives and you predict the future and so on, and people seem to be very impressed by the things you're saying. So they go, my goodness, how could this person know all about me if it wasn't due to some kind of psychic or paranormal phenomena? So that's what cold reading is. The person walks in, you genuinely know nothing about them, and you're able to convince them that in fact you know a great deal about them.
Let's talk just for a second about the people who, and this is a big business for people. You see these storefronts everywhere. The people who frequent these types of cold readers, we'll call them, we can make some generalizations about them. I mean, some people just go in on a lark and everything, but they're kind of believers in their critical thinking, and their skepticism about that is not in the greatest spot.
Well, they're people that have got an issue. I mean, you don't go and consult a GP or a physician or whatever word you'd use in the States, unless you've got some kind of issue. And it's the same with a psychic. You normally don't turn up for fun. You turn up because you've got one of X number of worries in terms of relationships or career or money or travel or whatever it is.
Let's start with the more obvious level. If someone's sitting across from you, and you're looking at them and you're listening to them, there are a lot of things that you can discover about a perfect stranger that will tell you some things about them.
Yeah, this is the kind of Sherlock Holmes idea. And of course, Arthur Conan Doyle, ironically, a huge believer in particularly mediumship. And I think people look at that and go, how could that be the case? But actually, the idea that you can pick up very much from someone's body language or the way they're dressed and so on, is a little bit of a red herring. I mean, you can to some extent. I suspect it's not used that much because you don't need to. It's there are other techniques which are more powerful.
And let's talk about one of those. We know it as the Barnum effect or the Forer effect, where you can just say things that just apply to virtually everyone, and it sounds very specific to the person who's listening to it.
Absolutely. And so this goes back to the late 1940s. This is some of the first research by Forer, and he is curious about why astrological books seem to be accurate, and so he just lifts some of these sentences. And he runs this amazing experiment, which I've run and many other psychologists have, where you get everyone to fill out a personality questionnaire. They give it to you. You go, we've analysed that, and here's your personality. Everyone goes, oh my goodness, that's amazing. And you've given them all the same paragraph. And they're all full of these fairly general statements. You tend to be overly critical of yourself. You like people who like and admire you. Sometimes you're X, other times you're Y. And so these statements people read meaning into.
This Forer effect or Barnum effect explains why astrology works on a piece of paper, or why people can just do a phone call and not have any idea what someone looks like, although their voice and their vocabulary can tip them off.
Yeah, I think so. But again, I think they're using other techniques, sort of the linguistic ones, rather than trying to pick up on actual cues. And we should say with the Barnum effect, it's referred to the Barnum effect, everyone thinks that's because, there's a sucker born every minute. But it's not. Barnum said about his museums and circuses, there's something here for everyone. And that's why it's called the Barnum effect, because in these readings, there's something here for everyone. They work with everyone.
I love the little acronym, the mnemonic, the SCAM: travel, health, expectations about the future, sex, career, ambitions, and money. That sort of covers all these likely reasons that people come in the first place.
Absolutely, yeah. I think actually in the book that's credited to somebody else. I'm not certain I was smart enough to come up with that, but absolutely, you're right. So it's a great idea. And you'll see that in psychic readings. People are coming in with one or two of those issues. There's not that many issues. And so the psychic will often bounce between the issues. And this is where they are looking for feedback. So they'll go, are you going on a trip soon? And if the person goes, it's just a small trip, maybe you're just going across town. Where if they'd have gone, yes, that's a big trip that you're planning, and then you're concerned about it, and so on. The same with relationships, how things are going. I get the impression something to do with relationships or a difficult relationship. If the person goes, no, that's just maybe a friend in your life, maybe someone in the office and you're advising them. Where if the person nods and goes, yes, okay, so it's how's your marriage? I'm getting the impression of a marriage perhaps not going so well, or if you recently broken up, and blah, blah, blah. So you get this. You get the impression it's a single piece of commentary where the person is telling you something. What they're actually doing is bopping around those topics, trying to home in on the one which is the reason that you've turned up. So that, I think, is a genuine picking up of signals from somebody.
I was a little bit surprised to hear him say that not all fortune tellers are necessarily frauds.
Yeah, a lot of skeptics feel the same way. You can acquire these skills just by thinking you have this ability and getting certain feedback from people. If you do lots of them, you can get positive feedback and start to do some of these things and be successful at it. Yeah.
Oh, so some of them are just looking at you to figure out what to predict.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like reading the person, you know.
That's an interesting skill set because stand-up comics do that. They will look at the audience and figure out, it's like, oh, there's a bunch of couples sitting together, so I can do my gay jokes. So they're looking at and figuring out based on what they see of people.
Sure. Yeah, a lot of stand-ups can go in whatever direction the audience is sending them and try to make them happy, but based on the reactions, absolutely.
But on a personal level, it's one person reading the person in front of them and determining what that person wants to hear.
Right. Yeah. Great skill to have in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it would be great to see that cold reading in action.
Oh, we can do that for you. In fact, I have a great example of someone using behavior to steer their reading on me. I got read by 3 different tarot card readers on Penn and Teller.
Bullshit.
That's right. That's the name of the show, Bullshit. We arranged with the producers to have 3 professional tarot card readers come in. None of them knew that each other was going to be there.
Oh, they didn't predict that.
No, they missed that one. And so I did 3 different readings, but what happened was I changed my look and my behavior for each one to see if we would get the same reading. Wow. So if you want to see there, we got a clip. Yeah. Roll the Penn and Teller clip.
We set up shop in a downtown LA loft. Jim Underdown, a skeptical investigator for the Center for Inquiry West, agreed to help us find out if a deck of cards can reveal our true selves.
Believers think that tarot cards actually have magical powers in and of themselves. In reality, tarot card readers are just visually analyzing someone. They're picking up on their behavior, they're picking up on their answers, they're picking up on their clothing, their appearance. And they're really using that to make the predictions and analysis. That the cards are there is really incidental to the reading.
Our man Jim turned himself into a pathetic loser, complete with whiskers, dirty clothes, and even tequila breath. Jim was really pouring on the loser personality. Would Mark, our first tarot reader, buy into his act?
It represents work. So your surroundings are able to support you regarding work.
Oh.
But you have to get the resumes out. You have to let people know that you're available.
We revamped Loser Jim into a completely different character, a slick, highly stressed businessman. And we even told him to ham it up. Letting Regina first catch a glimpse of him this way.
How many times do I have to go over this with you? Jesus. Yeah, if you want to keep your job. Look, they're waiting for me. I gotta go. All right, bye. Hi, Regina.
Hello.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so what I see is that there's been probably a lot of hard work, some stress, and some exhaustion.
Hi, sweetie. How you doing? Yeah, good. Everything's going well. I'll see you a little bit later. I'll give you a call as soon as we get done with this stuff, and let's go out for dinner. Yeah, you cook enough. That's fine. Hi.
How are you?
Hi, I'm Jim.
Take 10 cards off.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
By now, you know where this is going.
Okay, this one is the lovers. Love is gonna stick and stay. Shows you're very happy in love, in marriage.
I am not married, and I'm not currently in any relationship.
How about that, huh?
Whoa. It's like they just looked at you and made some educated guesses.
It sure looks that way, doesn't it? Yeah. 3 completely different readings, same person each time.
Wow. Guess they were blown away by your character work. What did you go to Juilliard?
Yeah. neither the cards nor the readers saw through my lame acting job. It was kind of pathetic, actually, when you think about it. Yeah. But bear in mind that cold reading doesn't have to be done across from each other. You don't have to actually see the person.
Oh, like phone psychics, like Miss Cleo.
Yeah, exactly. Now you're showing your age. It's Cleo. But yeah, so you don't have to see the people. There's a whole nother part of cold reading, which Richard Wiseman will talk about, where we talk about just general things where you're not reading a person at all. It just works anyway. Richard? So for those of us who have been looking at this sort of thing for a long time, there are even less obvious techniques that are put into play. And again, maybe consciously, maybe not. But it's fun to sit around with someone like you and watch a reading, and we can do like a play-by-play and see every little technique that's being used. One of them that was a discovery for me that I didn't really realize, but I listened to an hour-long phone reading, and the woman who was doing the reading asked a ton of questions. So really, they kind of slip them in, but they get a lot just by asking questions directly to the sitter.
Yeah, no, I always think it should be in a sense, the reader paying the sitter, because the sitter's doing most of the work on this. So absolutely, a ton of questions, which is the easiest way of finding out information about somebody. And of course, that gets back to the fact that if you were skeptical, you wouldn't really be going to a reader for advice. You're there for help. Why wouldn't you try and aid the process? You know, if you went to see a doctor with a bad back and they said, which part of your back hurts? You wouldn't go, well, you're the expert, you tell me. You'd say, it's the top part. You know, you'd try and help. That's precisely what's happening in a reading. Just part of it. The other thing is normally there's a lot of predictions being thrown out, a lot of names, and people misremember. They think, oh, it's only one or two, the significant ones. And I've forgotten just how many were there. So when people record these things and listen back, often they can be quite surprised.
It's a skill in itself to crank out these predictions in a prodigious rate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that means people are verbally skilled. There's no doubt about that. And they're not the kind of quiet, retiring types. I mean, that wouldn't make for a great reading. They tend to be sort of out there and trying to get hits all the time. And often the actual language can be quite vague, and the person sharpens it up. So, you know, it could be, I see a ship coming into port. What does that mean to you? Well, what is that? And the person says, oh, I'm thinking of a career change. Yeah, that's it. It's a career change. Now, what the person will remember is the psychic said about a career change. How could they have known? The psychic didn't. The psychic said something much more vague, and you're then telling them the answer without realizing it. Because that's what we do in conversation. We try and help each other out. So there's a lot of that. I'm seeing a circle, but the ends aren't joined. Why wouldn't the ends be joined? And then you tell the person what that means, and then they're off.
The sitter connects the dots between the vague guess and the specific.
Absolutely, and then misremembers. You know, it doesn't go, well, they spoke about ship. That could have been anything. I mentioned a career change. It becomes the psychic knew about this particular thing.
One of the things I always laugh at, and I saw this live with John Edward, James Van Praagh, and maybe even Teresa Caputo or one of the other famous ones. They all said, they said the exact same thing. They all said, I'm getting an M or a J name. And it's the same thing. You're going to fill, by the way, and I looked this up, you know, at certain points in history, M and J are like always in the top 2 or 3 first letters of all first names, male and female. So it's a really good guess to start out with something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've seen, because I spend a lot of time in Scotland, English mediums come up. And because Scottish names are quite different. And so all the things that work for an English audience suddenly aren't working for a Scottish one. And that's how you know they're depending on kind of stereotypes, essentially, and suddenly they're being kind of caught out. So, no, it is fascinating. Also, it tends to be a lot of flattery in there. So, you've got a lot of untapped creative potential. And we all love to think we have. There's very few of us who kind of go, no, I'm maxed out on creativity. This is me on max. So there's a lot of flattery. People tend to admire you, and they can see the wonderful thing. Yes, that's me. So there's a lot of that in there, and there's a lot of double headers. I love double header statements. Sometimes you enjoy being the life and soul of a party, but other times you want to be on your own, just with a book. Well, you just covered the entire spectrum of introversion, extroversion. How can anyone say that isn't true of them? It's kind of amazing. It's based on this idea that in a normal conversation, certain rules apply. And what a psychic reading is doing is taking those rules and kind of breaking them without you realizing. So the other person doesn't have information in their head before they speak. They're not really following up on something you've said. All these things, what they're doing is, without you realizing it, sometimes fishing, sometimes being vague, getting you to sharpen, you then misremember it. That's really at the center of cold reading.
There are very specific sounding predictions that people are very impressed about that really apply to many more people than you would think. For instance, the one that really got me is saying, especially to a woman, you have a piece of your mother's jewelry. She gave you a piece of your mother, of her jewelry. And people are invariably, oh my God, how could you possibly know that? But apparently it's rather common.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sue Blackmore, another wonderful skeptic, did some work into this quite a few years ago. And it was wonderful. This was in the UK, where a third of men had a scar on their left kneecap. It was something like half the population had a copy of Handel's Water Music in some form. And so these things people drop in. And of course, if they get a miss, then it's not your left, it's your right. Or, okay, obviously, that's the other thing, is of course, they're trying to hear the spirit world. So if they can't quite hear it properly, then that explains the kind of vagueness. But yeah, there was a lot of those things they would drop in, and if you do get the hit, it's amazing, it's great. And people not realizing these things which are called population stereotypes. This notion, if you say to somebody, think of a number where a two-digit number where both digits are odd and different, most people think of 35 or 37. Again, that some of that research carried out by David Marks, another skeptic. So these things, people don't realize how predictable they and their lives are, and some psychics or some psychic readings take advantage of that.
Yeah, everyone likes to think they live this unique life, but
absolutely,
really
yes,
not so much the case. But by the way, I have a scar on my left knee.
So do I.
And I'm not,
yeah.
I got to use that from now on. Richard Wiseman is the author of Paranormality and many other books that'll change your life and clear your skin and do all sorts of wonderful things for you.
Any issue you've got, I've written a book about it. I'm getting the impression I've written a book about that. No, it's not just a book. I've written a whole load about whatever the issue is. Yes.
Entire wings of bookstores and libraries. Richard Wiseman. Thanks so much for being on Skeptilab, Richard. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Wow. There's lots to keep in mind.
Yeah. Well, I think anybody could do this with a little bit of practice. It's an acquired skill.
Well, I don't know. It might be fun to see some regular schmuck try this stuff on unsuspecting people.
Yeah, well, we did just that, and I'm the regular schmuck.
What?
Yeah. This time it was on Dr. Phil, and wait, it gets worse. Dr. Phil had on like 4 psychics, and they wanted to have a token skeptic come on to kind of balance it out a little bit.
Yeah, I could see that being you.
And I wanted to just test them like we normally do, but they didn't want to do that. So we decided that the skeptic would do the cold reading just to show that a non-psychic could also convince a group of people. But here's the problem. The guy I was going to get, an experienced cold reader, was not available. So I had to cram all weekend for this Monday shoot and go in and do it myself.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it was my first cold reading ever, which probably wasn't very bright because I was on national television.
Wow. So what happened?
Well, it was pretty wild. Let's have a look. You get another look at cold reading live.
Wow.
I consider myself a psychic medium. Let's begin. I'm feeling some relationship stress here. I think it might be you. Two different energies, two different men. Are you not in a relationship right now?
No, I have a boyfriend.
You have a boyfriend, but there's another man also who is showing some interest or had some past interest in you.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Is it an M or a J name?
M.
Don't leave your current boyfriend to go back because it will
Don't
definitely be a regression. Okay, good. I'm seeing an older man is coming to me now. It's another J name or a G sound. Somebody has a silver car.
I do.
Have you had it long?
No.
Someone has a sibling who passed, a brother. Maybe it was a sister.
My sister.
Your sister, and it was kind of sudden. I mean,
Yes, it's completely unexpected.
unexpected, exactly. But she is saying, don't feel bad for me. The pain was very short. She wants to be remembered.
Oh, she is.
It's a health issue, a little bit of back problem. Somebody, yeah.
Right, I have scoliosis. I feel like it's getting worse.
Make sure you stay active. Make sure you don't just give into it and turn sedentary.
I am. Mm-hmm.
Wow. That one woman was actually crying because of your prediction.
Oh, I know. And I got to tell you, I was relieved that she did that because it meant I got through to her. If a rookie like me could convince people enough to make someone cry, and I'm sorry about that, but then anybody could do this.
Well, I'm sure Dr. Phil was convinced.
Yeah. Dr. Phil turned on me like a jackal. Yeah, he turned the whole thing around. He made it into a contest between me and the woman who had done hundreds or thousands of readings, like who was the better reader. Of course she's the better reader. There's going to be no contest there. All my point was just that someone with no training at all could use this technique and convince people that I had magical powers.
Well, you did good on Dr. Phil, but I could have done better.
All right, well, I'll give you another crack at the crystal ball. But first, let's do this. Let's summarize everything first and see what we've learned here, and then we'll go down and we'll see what you got on the fortune teller table.
Deal.
So the first thing to remember is hot reads are a thing. Your information is out there all over the place, and it's, for most people, it's plentiful. So know that they can find out details about you. Second, vulnerable people go to fortune tellers all the time and they want to believe this is true. So they're actually helping the process along. They're giving out information and they're not very critical in their thinking of what this process is. And then fortune tellers in general use a whole host of techniques to make this feel like they're getting this information from sources that they couldn't possibly know, otherworldly sources, whatever, it doesn't matter. But they are very convincing just through using all these techniques. What else?
Well, other than the fact that half of our hearts in history are on our phones, also, believers misremember sessions as being much more accurate than they actually were.
Absolutely right. Good memory, by the way. People remember the hits and forget the misses. And luckily for the fortune tellers, it helps people come back time and time again and keep that money flowing. So, yeah, very good.
Yeah, I think I got this cold reading down.
All right. Well, let's head back down to the salon and see what you've got.
All right.
All right, hotshot, let's see what you got.
I see a hard-working actor getting a big check for his hard work on Skeptilab.
Wait a minute. You got this thing upside down. See? I'm seeing a very talented actor donating some of his residual checks to the Center for Inquiry. It's right there.
I'm seeing my agent and my lawyer at the SAG-AFTRA offices.
No. I'm seeing a lavish lunch and some nice parting gifts.
I'll see.
Phil, thanks so much for being on Skeptilab. It's been great having you on.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Jim. And good to see you.
Am I in there? So, do you think you could prove paranormal ability under scientific test conditions? Take a shot at our $500,000. Go to cfiig.org. And by the way, hit the like button below. Don't forget to subscribe to the CFI YouTube channel for more interesting content.